Alright, X-Blast Trap League Starter build video coming up. I'm going to be going over my League Starter for the Forbidden Sanctum League, which is this Hexblast Traps Poison Saboteur, which is mostly due to Hexblast getting some mechanical changes. It's not like a completely new skill or anything, but it's gotten reworked a bit, and the main takeaway from it is that Hexblast is a lot spammier now, which opens up things like traps. And this build should play kind of just like any spammy trap build. I'll just throw traps and they'll detonate on enemies and they'll die. But you need a few things to get it going, and it has a few other cool interactions that should make it stand out a bit, and it's just a new thing to toy with. But without further ado, there's gonna be kind of like three sections, I guess. Here I'm gonna kind of quickly show off the concept behind the character, and then I'll open up POB and I'll show my initial build plan that is always subject to change but is looking pretty good as a starter. And then I'm gonna probably very briefly cover some of the pre-Hexblast trap leveling, because you won't be able to just do Hexblast traps right away. Otherwise it'll be probably not a great experience. So I'm gonna pop in a T1 map here. This isn't really showing off like the defense or the damage of the character, just kind of mechanically how it works. So what's gonna be going on is I have a Hexblast gem and then trap with cluster traps, which cluster traps usually isn't ideal for a spammy trap, but we kind of need to always throw multiple traps here due to the nature of Hexblast needing an enemy to be cursed. We need our first trap out of these three to curse an enemy, and then the other two will actually be the ones that detonate for AoE. And then I just have some poison supports in, and I have a ring with curse on hit. Now at League Start, I'm probably going to try to start off with gloves for curse on hit, because I think getting a corrupted pair of gloves with just some form of curse on hit is going to be the easiest way for me to just get any curse. Doesn't even matter what curse. Ideally we'll get temporal chains or despair, but whatever. You need some form of curse on hit to really make it work. And then once you have that, it's just a trap build. Like, I'll just run around, I throw traps, AoE happens, and enemies should die. Like I said, here this isn't necessarily representative of what the damage will look like, just kind of showing mechanically what it'll look like. Where it's just throwing traps. The AoE should be around the same as this. I think maybe slightly less AoE than I'm doing right now. But you can see it's pretty basic once you get it rolling, straightforward. Like, it's just a trapper. It's like playing something kind of like, I don't know, maybe explosive trap or ice trap, just like those basic AoE traps, but you're probably getting a bit more AoE here because Hexblast just has a lot of AoE, and you get to do poison really easily because of it being default chaos damage. I don't think I have Withering Step or anything here to boost single target, no. But you can see it's easy. It's a little bit tricky to set up. There's some like weird janky options for getting curses. I've tried other things like Blasphemy, Profane Proxy, pretty much most of the things you can think of to do your main curse application while you're clearing. They all can work, but I found curse on hit to be by far the most reliable and smoothest gameplay wise. But yeah, that's hopefully what the build will play like, more or less. And the damage should get pretty high ramped up thanks to poison kind of just being in a really strong spot this league. And so let me open up this POB here, and I'll kind of show the planned out character. So we've got POB will open, there we go. It's a Sab. Pretty basic Sab trap setup. We've got our full trap nodes up to Chain Reaction, got Pyromaniac, got Born in Shadows, and then a lot of poison stuff and some little bit of aura stuff so we can run our defensive auras and all that. Nothing really too crazy on this tree, like it's about as basic I feel like as you can get. I have one little cluster for some spell suppression to help with that. Scion Life, just life, poison stuff. Clever Construction and Unstable Munitions are both really good. as well. And we're gonna get +1 curse from Whispers of Doom. POB doesn't have the updated wheel here. The thing I'm gonna take here will be, I think, 5 points actually in this cluster overall. It starts with like a curse effect node, and then I think when you go to the right, there's 2 AoE nodes that read similar to this one, I believe, where it's increased area of effect of Hex skills, which will be increased AoE for your Hex Blast, and I think they're 15% each. You go up the right side for those for 30 AoE, and then at the top above Whispers of Doom is another 5% curse effect. And it's like 1 extra point than you have to spend, but you're getting a lot for it, so I think that'll be worth it. All the masteries are pretty basic, and I'll have this POB linked. One thing, I don't even know if I had it in the POB because I hadn't tested it yet, no. I wasn't 100% sure if the poisons you inflict on non-poisoned enemies works with traps because it says you inflict, which sometimes means that they don't work with like traps or totems. I tested it, it works just fine. I will most certainly have that mastery, the 300% increased damage. I will at least have it early on for mapping. Because early mapping when the damage isn't as high, I think that's going to be very impactful. Might drop it later, like especially if I start doing like bossing stuff, it's not very good. But early on, that should be really high value. So you could grab that as well. And yeah, I mean the tree is nothing really that special. Like I said, just kind of basic poison. Like this looks very similar to what a seismic trap poison sab tree would look like. There's a lot of overlap there, so it's kind of nothing too innovative. And our skills, got the Hex Blast. This current setup is running Devouring Diadem. This is gonna be like my top priority once I get to maps, is farming for this helmet. And there's a trick you can do kind of where I think you have to, if you run a Katarina boss instance that is at tier 3 maps level or lower, like you don't do any betrayal stuff above a T3 map, Katarina can only drop either this helmet or I believe the flask. So if you just intentionally do a really low level one, the chance of getting the helmet's much higher, and I'll probably do that once or twice at the start. It also is just an easier boss fight to do early on. But this is going to be really good for us early. It has 25% reservation efficiency for the socketed gems where we'll put all our auras. And it gives us Eldritch Battery for free. We don't have to path to it. Saves a few points. EB is good because as soon as we get that, we can do a Divine Blessing Malevolence most likely. Unless our ES is just really, really bad overall. But it's what helps activate this Divine Blessing. And then in the helmet, it's going to be Determination, Grace, Herald of Agony, and Defiance Banner. I was looking at this a little bit more recently. I think once you get higher level and you have a little bit more open mana, you can actually, I'm going to try it right now. You can sneak another 25% aura in. Because you can see there's a lot of unreserved mana right now. If I put Arctic Armor in this helmet and then add Defiance Banner just somewhere else, it just barely has enough mana to make it work. And I'll probably try that. I don't know if it'll be Arctic Armor necessarily, maybe Tempest Shield, but you don't need Shock Immune on Sab, so maybe Aspect of the Crab even. But Arctic Armor does look pretty good actually. You get freeze immunity and you get a lot of fizz reduction while standing still tossing your traps. It's a good option. You can fit another 25% aura in if you take the Defiance Banner out and put it in there. Other than that though, on the Hex Blast itself with the EB setup, we've got Trap. And then for bossing, it'll be Swift Assembly. For mapping, it'll be Cluster Traps, Trap Mind Damage, Unbound Ailments, and Void Manipulation. If you don't have EB from the helmet, or if you don't get it on the tree, I don't think I'm going to get it on my tree until I get the helmet. So until then, I would be running Life Tap instead of Void Manipulation. And on a 5-link here, you would definitely drop Void Manipulation. If you're somehow still on a 4-link here, my early game 4-link is going to be Hex Blast plus Trap plus Multi-Trap plus Life Tap. And then the 5th link would probably be Unbound, and the 6th link would be Trap in Mine. Got some movement skills. I think I have a little bit of gem space open here still. Luckily, we don't have to worry too much about running out of gem space. Withering Step with increased duration and Molten Shell cast and damage taken is a good 4-link combo. You just need to make sure your cast and damage taken and Molten Shell are relatively low level so that you can level your Withering Step up all the way. And then the Withering Step gets the increased duration, and the Molten Shell gets the increased duration, but the Withering Step isn't forced into cast and damage taken. And then I have my... These are the 2 curses that we're going to be using. They're not activated in here, but just to show them. One of them will be from Curse on Hit, either a ring or gloves, and whichever one isn't Curse on Hit is going to be self-cast with the new Cursed Ground support for single target whenever you need that extra damage boost. The ideal situation is that you get a good, really good pair of gloves with temp chains on hit, corruption, or maybe there's going to be some new source of temp chains on hit that we don't know about. And then you want to self-cast the Despair, because temp chains, regardless of what gem level it is, whether it's gem level 1 or it's gem level 20, it always has other effects on cursed enemies expire 40% slower. That value doesn't scale, and that value is what gets really crazy with poison. So that 40% slower isn't 40% more duration, it's actually quite a bit more. This build has a total of like 10% curse effect, and if you just have 10% curse effect, so that would make it 44% slower, that ends up equaling 78% more duration for whatever debuffs you put on them. So 78% more poison duration, which I have simulated in the configs here. It's a huge damage multiplier. And so since that doesn't matter what level it is, that's good for the Curse on Hit, because Curse on Hit from items is always level 1 curses now. And then you want the max level Despair, because I think at level 1, the new Despair is like minus 15 Chaos Res, and it gets all the way up to minus 30 Chaos Res at max. So that's actually a pretty good difference. But that being said, I think what my character's gear progression is going to look like is early on, if I'm lucky, I'll have Corrupted Gloves with Temp Chains on hit, and then eventually I'll get a ring with Despair on hit, and I'll probably switch to it because I can make a decent ring. This would maybe be in around like low to mid level 90s. You can probably come across a decent Despair on hit rare ring and replace your gloves, because early on if you get gloves with Temp Chains on hit, they're probably trash gloves. Having a decent ring with Despair on hit and then getting to actually wear good gloves is better than wearing completely trash gloves, even though you might lose a little bit of damage. But then super end game, if you can get a really good pair of gloves, like take the stats on this, get rid of the implicits and replace it with Temp Chains, and you're good to go again. But other than that, that's the only like kind of tricky part of the gear. The rest is pretty straightforward. Right now I've got a dagger in with +1 and some dot multi. Realistically, early on you maybe just want to find +1, and then if you multi-mod or whatever, just whatever you can. You can also do trap damage as a prefix. I think it might actually go a little bit higher than this chaos one that I put on. You can do trap throwing speed as a bench crafted suffix. Not a ton of stats on the weapons though. There's the +1s, there's the dot multi, there's the percent damage, and then there's like a trap throwing speed craft. Shield is similar situation, just +1 chaos and then whatever else you can get. Alternatively, you can use Leper's Alms, which gives a decent little bit of damage boost over the +1 rare, and actually has really good ES and evasion. Like when I put this one on in POB, I'm gaining 170 energy shield and 5.4k evasion, and also gaining 5% DPS. But the way it's gaining DPS is by increasing the poison duration, which the poison duration is already really long. It's almost 6.5 seconds. So unless you're ramping up on an enemy for, 7 to 8 seconds, you're really not actually gaining damage on anything that dies faster than that. But it is a good option because it's a pretty common unique, and it's not too hard to come across early. And again, the high amount of ES evasion is really nice too. Body armor's just got some life and suppression and res, and then you'll get your aura implicits. Gloves, if you're having not corrupted temp chains rares, is the same thing, life, suppression, res. There's the dot multi, chaos multi implicit's the only one that matters for the influence stuff, really. The second one, that wither one, doesn't really matter that much, because thanks to temp chains being crazy now, your withers from Withering Step are going to last like 13 seconds or something ridiculous. Boots, same thing, life suppression res, move speed, and then action speed and faster poisons are probably ideal implicits. Amulet, you're going to want to get, I'd say either some chaos multi, or dot multi rather, or a +1 chaos, and then just whatever else you can get. Eventually you'd want one that has both +1 and dot multi, or maybe some unique amulet late game, but good thing to shoot for to start. This ring has life and fake despair on hit, just kind of showing that it would be there. I initially put in a despair on hit mod, but it was messing with the POB, so I just put in some random text to show that you could have it. But rings for the most part just life and res, I think. Nothing too crazy. Belt is actually kind of important. The belt has some strength on it too. There are a little bit of strength and int requirements because the tree doesn't get too much of either of them. You do need a little bit on gear here and there. But belts, you really want to craft a belt eventually with Essences of Zeal because you get a lot of trap speed. But aside from that, there's also the Veiled Craft for Regenerate ES when a rare or unique is nearby. That'll give you extra ES sustain for when you're spamming against a boss. It might end up being not completely necessary, but it's probably something that you're going to want while you're running an EB setup, just to make sure you don't run out of ES to cast, especially when you hit like this Malevolence. Divine Blessing is costing 426 ES out of our 500, so it'll bring us pretty low. And so maybe if I casted that and then started spamming immediately after without this belt mod, you might run out of ES. So it just helps with that. And then the jewels are pretty basic. I just have life and some increased damage mods. But yeah, that's kind of what I would look at for the kind of early gear. Like, there's decent items, right, but nothing super insane. And that's kind of what I've planned up to. Not much past that. And with all that being said, this is set to pinnacle bosses in POB. I have some custom stuff in here, like the Hex Blast buff is simulated. I have simulated for Swift Assembly and the throw additional traps trap mastery, because POB doesn't calculate throwing additional traps properly. And then some other stuff, Perfect Crime. This is our 35% chance for traps to trigger an additional time. Is essentially another more throwing speed. And then I actually have to put reduced damage in here, because when you spec into Perfect Crime, which gives 10% increased damage for each trap, for some reason POB just assumes that you're going to have all of your traps out all the time, so it's giving us 170% increased damage from that node, just assuming we have 17 traps thrown at all times. And I just am getting rid of most of that because it's not realistic. So I did 130 reduced. Now it's like 40% increase, assuming we have 4 traps out at any given time, which is a much more realistic amount. It might even be a little bit higher than that, but just fixes it up. And then I have the temp chains thing. And so, man, pretty decent gear, nothing crazy at all. 6.3k life, 15k armor. I'll probably end up trying to boost the armor a little bit more. 23k evasion. This is no flasks. We've got cap suppression, capped chaos res. The only thing that's not really crazy is like higher Ellie res. But this is good enough defense right here to do everything that's not like uber bosses. And it's sitting at over 8 million DPS, which is much higher than I thought it would be. It does a lot of damage. And might have noticed this Devouring Diadem has 81% duration of ailments while focused, which is a huge boost for poison builds. But this is actually without that focus mod on. If I tick that on, it goes all the way up to 11 million DPS. But it also increases the poison duration to 9 seconds. So unless you're ramping for 9 full seconds, you're not actually gaining that damage. I might not even care that much about getting that focus mod. I mean, if you get a helmet and it has it, I think you definitely pick it. But it's really not that important. I think early on, I would almost rather have like a strength plus int hybrid unveil. on the helmet to help with stat requirements, or like a resist one. Pretty much any unveil you get's probably going to be good, but just wanted to show that. But that's the build. And I can't really show too much again because other than like functionally how it works, um, it's hard to do much with it in game because the buffs are pretty substantial to the damage and all that. But real quick, one more thing, since there's a little bit of weirdness with this build where I need Curse on Hit. You need Curse on Hit, I think, to really get it activated. So there's a goal of getting Curse on Hit as soon as possible. I've done some practice. I've like tried a lot of things. As far as I can tell, the best way is to go for Corrupted Gloves. And so that means you want to do as many things early as you can that give corrupted item drops and give Vault Orbs. So the strategy that I've come up with is while I'm leveling, as soon as I hit level 30 plus zones, level 30 is the minimum for Curse on Hit. Once I'm in level 30 plus zones, which is like end of Act 3, start of Act 4, I'll do every Vol side area I see. They can drop corrupted items, so there's a small chance you get a corrupted pair of gloves to drop from the Vol vessel at the end, and if you get lucky, it'll have a Curse on Hit. They drop Vol gems and they drop sacrifice fragments, which you can do the vendor recipe for, and I will be doing if I need to, which is 7 Vol gems and 1 fragment to get a Vol orb. I originally thought it wouldn't be worth doing that, and I would just spam run the sacrifice fragments in my map device for more Vol side areas. But that turned out to be pretty bad. They don't actually drop that much loot, so I'm just going to do the Vol orb recipe. So that's one source of getting corrupted items. The second way is as soon as you get to Act 7, towards the end, and you start getting Alva missions. I'm going to do every Alva mission that I see while doing campaign. And I want to see a level 3 Tempest room or high level currency rooms are the two prios there. If you get a level 3 Tempest room, you get a Corrupting Tempest in your temple. And if you play around that and you play for the killing mobs with Corrupting Tempest, the amount of corrupted items you'll get is insane, and you're more or less guaranteed to find some sort of Curse on Hit gloves once you just clear through it all, just by sheer volume of the items you get. And then the currency room is obviously good because you get Vol Orbs. I did one with a rank 3 currency room, and I think I got 3 Vol Orbs out of it, which doesn't sound like much, but this is like, I'm in Act 9 when I did it, so that's really good for us. And then the other thing is Expedition. Any Tujen expeditions I'll do so that I can hopefully get some Tujen haggling to get some Vol Orbs. And then also, if I see an expedition that has a remnant for enemies drop corrupted items, I'll probably do that as well. And so if I combine all those, you combine all that, you do that while you're in the campaign, there's a decent chance, it's not guaranteed, there's a decent chance that you'll end up with some form of Curse on Hit corrupted gloves by the time you like finish campaign and get to maps. Now, in addition to that, I'm planning on doing the new league mechanic, which may or may not drop good loot. We'll see. If it's dropping like really bad loot early on, I'll probably stop doing it, but I'll at least try it out because it might be a good source of all orbs. But don't know yet. That's the plan. And to do all that farming pre-Hexblast Trap, what I'm going to level with is Poison Concoction. It's seeming like a really solid leveling meta skill right now for anything poison. It's really easy to get going. You don't need to worry about a weapon the entire time you're leveling with it. This is great. There's one less thing to have to think about. And I just wanted to show the leveling tree for the Poison Concoction setup so you can kind of see the order of things that I'm doing things in. This isn't like super important, the exact orders, but I'm just going to start specking points kind of in the order that I would get them. So we go to Blood Siphon quickly. This is actually for strength requirements because I think I'm going to be doing my 1 to 12 before I get Poison Concoction with like Splitting Steel. I need a little bit of strength to use some of the two-handers. Grab Trickery. Get Fangs of the Viper for good chaos damage speed. And 2 points to get to this Life and Mana on hit is really good. To get the Blood Drinker is really good. Down to these Life Flask nodes for flask generation so you don't run out of flask charges. One thing with Poison Concoction that, I mean, seems obvious but probably worth mentioning. You want to have constantly updated life flask. Whatever the best life flask you can use, you want. And if you do that, it'll be really easy. Go to ballistics from here. And then I think I go this way next, get these poison nodes. Continue down through Ranger. Go through the move speed suppression, get some more life. Go down to these poison nodes. And then backtrack up. At this point, we're going to be at basically 100% chance to poison with like Herald of Agony. Grab Wasting. We're probably getting pretty close to Act 6 at this point, I think. Grab Charisma, because around Act 6, when I do the Twilight Strand side quest where you can start buying any gem you want, I'm going to get Shield Charge, and I want to be able to run Haste. So once I get to Act 6 and I can get Shield Charge, I'll be running with Charisma for the extra reservation, Haste, Precision, and Herald of Agony. And you can just start really, really zooming at that point. But then from there, we're pretty much done with his bottom side, other than probably Revenge of the Hunted. And I like this little extra life node. And then we're going to start going up. We'd go up this way, a little bit of travel, Written in Blood, Atrophy, maybe Influence. But at this point, you're getting, I think, pretty close to Blood Aqueducts. Yeah, this says with all the skill points, you're level 54. This is pretty close to when I get to BA, and at this point, I'm pretty much done focusing on anything that has to do with specifically Poison Concoction, and I'm just going to get stuff that I know I'm using in my finish tree. So we probably could get the curse stuff here. You can even get Septic, or this isn't called Septic Spell, Serpentine Spellslinger. These nodes don't do anything for you while you're Poison Concoction, but you do get -5 Chaos Res here. You can get Influence, whatever. That's the Poison Concoction leveling. For gems, like I said, Herald of Agony and Precision are stuff you want early. Flame Dash for movement. Withering Step is good to pick up pretty early too. I don't use it for movement until I get Shield Charge really, but you can just press it on bosses for damage. You want to pick up Plague Bearer in Act 3. Plague Bearer doesn't really become that useful until it gets a few levels, like late Act 4, start of Act 5, Plague Bearer becomes really good and just starts carrying. And then Despair for your curse. And for the Poison Concoction, as soon as you hit level 12, you put it on. What I like is a 3-link all green with Poison Concoction, Volley, Onslaught. So I can put this in here. Poison Concoction, be like this, Volley, Onslaught. And then at some point in probably late Act 3, maybe, you start wanting a little bit more damage. You can drop the Onslaught for lesser multiple projectiles. And this is also when you start getting like a lot of the poison stuff, because once you're going heavy poison scaling, these things at low level have like pretty hefty less proj multipliers, but they don't matter when you're poisoned. Those don't do anything. So this is a good 3-link. Once you get a 4-link, if it's another green gem, you can add Onslaught back in, or you can add Unbound Ailments for a blue gem for more damage. And it'll either be this with the Unbound or this with the Onslaught as your 4-link to finish out the rest of the campaign. The only change would be once you get to level 38, end of Act 4, early Act 5, you're going to drop Volley and LMP for greater Volley and EMP. And that's it. I've done a few runs with this Poison Concoction, hadn't played it before. It's really one of the easiest leveling things that I've done. Like, it's not the fastest, but it's very, very easy. So, cool. And I think that covers everything. Poison Hex Blast traps. Looking pretty good. I think the early bits of day 1 are going to be a bit bumpy. I think it's going to be a bit janky to start. But it really does look like once it hits its stride, it should be very solid. It's not going to compete with like the top of the top meta skills, like something like Seismic Trap especially. But it's pretty much something new, and it's cool, and it's interesting to build around. And it might at least map a little bit faster. So, yeah. If you guys enjoyed it, thanks for watching. See ya.